Hello. What? Why are you interrupting my intro? What happened there?
I didn't know you were starting.
Well, welcome back to another special episode of Cinema Shock.
Nothing but professionalism here on Cinema Shock.
Yeah.
Do your intro proper.
Sorry. Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock, the show that digs deep into the stories behind your favorite cult and genre movies. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horne.
And I'm your other host, Justin Bishop. Last week on the show, we kicked off our brand new series on the career of John Carpenter by looking at the casting and early development of 1976's Assault on Precinct 13. We also looked at kind of the other 30 years of John Carpenter's life very briefly during that episode. But when we left off, the cast was set, the $100,000 budget was locked, and the production was moving into the streets of Los Angeles. Today, we're finishing the job, and we're going to go inside the grueling schedule of the 20-day night shoot, the shocking scene that nearly tanked the film's release, and the legendary score that would eventually provide the blueprint for Halloween. This is part 2 of the making of Assault on Precinct 13.
Woo!
Thank you.
That's an exciting way to begin.
Should do that every
I love
episode.
it.
You gotta woo.
Yeah.
Because the budget on Assault on Precinct 13 was so tight, Carpenter and his crew couldn't afford to film on a regular studio backlot. Instead, they had to perform a geographical heist of sorts, stitching together fictional neighborhoods using pieces of Los Angeles that were miles apart. The physical building that was used for the exterior of Precinct 9, Division 13, was the old Venice police station on Venice Boulevard. Now, at the time of filming, it was decommissioned, a rundown shell of a building. This was kind of a gift to the production because it meant that they could actually shoot out the windows and use the real front doors without worrying about disrupting actual police business. Now, this building is, honestly, it's absolutely gorgeous. The actual building that serves as the exterior, it was built in the Art Deco style in 1929, and it actually functioned as a police station and a jail until like mid 1970s, like right before Assault was shot there. But I looked into this because I was curious if it still stood, if it was still there, because I'm like, ooh, maybe I could visit it one day and go take a picture of the Assault on Precinct 13 building. Actually, it took on a second life in 1977, so not long after the movie was completed, well, a year after the film's release. That year, it became the home of the Social and Public Art Resource Center, or SPARC, a nonprofit with a mission to produce, preserve, and promote activist and socially relevant artwork. And the jail cells inside the building are still intact, and they use the jail space as an exhibition space for art, recognizing, according to their website, they say they do this to recognize the vital function that the arts play in social justice movements, which is pretty cool. So, like, if you go on their website, go on the SPARC website, SPARC, go on their website, you can see pictures of this and like the jail cells inside this building, but with paintings hung on them, literally on the bars. It's pretty rad. Anyway, cool. I digress. I just went down a rabbit hole because I was curious.
Yeah, you distracted me. Now I'm like pulling it up online and looking at the pictures of SPARC.
It's very cool. But because they were shooting in real neighborhoods at night, cinematographer Douglas Knapp had to contend with existing street lights, and rather than fighting against them, he used them to his advantage. He used those lights as the primary source for the Street Thunder gang, turning the attackers into terrifying silhouettes against the sickly orange glow of LA vapor lamps. I was reading an article about the LA vapor lamps the other day, and apparently Drive was the last major film shot in LA before they changed over to it's all LED lights now. It doesn't have quite the same ambiance that these vapor lamps did, which is why Drive looks so damn good.
Agreed.
So while a real location was used for the exterior, the interiors of the station, the lobby, the cells, the hallways, a lot of those were actually sets built at Producer Studio in West Hollywood. Tommy Lee Wallace and Craig Stearns had to meticulously match the lighting to the Venice location to ensure that the seams of the movie didn't show.
It's fun to hear him talk about it on the commentary. And actually, it directly goes back to like those early childhood films we talked about that Carpenter, he's using 4 different locations just to get Bishop through the front door when he gets out of the car, basically. Gets out of his car in Venice. His point of view of the street is South Central. His look across the street at the parking lot is Ventura Boulevard. His walk through the door lands him on a West Hollywood soundstage. So it's just fun to go from like the kid who was figuring out how to use that little splicer his dad gave him or whatever, to make it this way. And you're touching on this, but like a lot of the biggest struggle wasn't just the geography; it was the atmosphere. That he wanted South Central He needed to look like a ghetto to look menacing, but he actually says it was like really bright and sunny and the locals super friendly. So it's tough to, have like this horrible area of town to like get, sieged from when everybody's like, the neighbors just want to offer you lemonade and come hang out and watch and whatever. So he's like working overtime to find the right spot just to make it look rough. You mentioned a 20-day like shoestring budget. I mean, they shot straight through Thanksgiving, but the physical toll of the shooting was just crazy because he describes like the longest shooting day of his entire career happened in this movie because he had like a brutal 24-hour marathon he had to get done in the jail. So he said they walked in at 8 a.m. and they did not leave until 8 a.m. the next day. He calls it an endurance test and said he felt like he'd been beaten senseless by the time they walked out.
I can't imagine. Did they not sleep?
It sounds like they did not sleep that entire time.
Wow. Now, the script specifies that the precinct is in the process of being closed down. I mean, that's a big plot point in the movie. And Wallace used that to create a sense of vulnerability in the set, Tommy Lee Wallace. And he achieved this by this kind of like dying look, because the building kind of has to look like it's dying. And he did it by actually moving furniture out of the shot. So normally a production designer's adding all kinds of stuff, his set dressing and all this stuff. He actually is doing the opposite. He's moving things out of the shot, leaving outlines on the walls where pictures used to hang and dust patterns on the floor. And this visual storytelling told the audience that the building was already half dead and defenseless before a single shot was fired, before they get sieged upon. When we see characters looking out of the station windows into the dark, dangerous streets, that's kind of where this movie magic happens, like what you're talking about, where they have the 4 different shots to get a single shot, basically, because they're not looking at Venice. They're looking at they're looking at South Central LA. That's what the exterior shots coming from the windows are shooting. And some of them are in North Hollywood. So depending on which direction you're shooting, it might be a completely different location. And Carpenter and Knapp used long lenses to compress the background, making the surrounding houses look like they were pressing in on the station, shrinking the world around our heroes.
Describe that to me a little more, like, because we were talking about before that we were talking about these panorama or whatever, the camera with the wide view, and then you get like more space. So what do you mean like compressing?
Well, when you're shooting with a long lens, it's going to make things that are further away feel like they're a little bit closer spatially. When I was talking about the wide panorama, you're talking about vertically, the space around it.
Yeah.
Whereas the long lens is shrinking things spatially like this, so that the things that are, even though a lot of times they'll use it, I mean, they get used in movies all the time, but you might want something to look closer than it actually is. Like, let's say there's a car stunt where you want it to look like it's really close to the person, but it's actually happening further away. So they use a longer lens to make it look on film like it's actually closer. So they're using the panorama for the expansive horizontal view, right? But they're using long lenses for some of those shots to make it feel like it's sort of like pressing in on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. The best part is subscribers to Cinema Shock Plus will get to see all the shit you were doing with your hands while you were explaining that.
I hope I explained it enough with my mouth for people who aren't listening to that. But yes, I was doing a lot of pantomiming.
Yeah. But yeah, all that stuff we're talking about is he's so big on emphasizing isolation and just this disconnected feeling to it. I think you mentioned the vapor lamps earlier. Another cool thing about that I thought was there's specifically here like these mercury vapor lamps. And I think Carpenter points out that specific kind of mercury lamp, it gives the POVs an eerie feel. It pulsates on screen, sort of.
Yeah.
That I love in the script. It keeps them trapped on the ground floor during the siege. And Carpenter, even during the commentary, he's like watching it. He's like, watching this back. Now I'm like, guys, get up to the second floor. There's a second floor of this building. Why are you just staying down here? And he's like, but I'll tell you why they don't go upstairs. We have the money to have a set upstairs. So they stay here.
Yeah, because even the final stand was a separate piece of the puzzle. That those basement scenes, which that you're talking about, the basement when they go towards the end of the movie, right?
Yeah.
So those were not filmed on the same set. They were filmed in the bowels of a building in downtown LA that was specifically chosen for its industrial pipes and kind of lack of natural light.
Yeah, this is one of those things that like over time it could be a mix of facts or something, because to be clear, in the commentary he says they had this setup next door, which maybe would be he says the base. It's
well,
like
the building with the basement was right next door to the soundstage where they were shooting.
Okay, he describes it like it was a set already there. Talks about Doug Knapp and like lighting it so perfectly and all that stuff. Anyway, yeah,
but
interesting.
I mean, they used it as a set, but I think it was from what I could tell, it was an existing basement in the building right next to the soundstage that they then repurposed as a set.
Gotcha.
But they needed every bit of this atmosphere, of course, because getting this movie in the can was its own kind of siege. Because they're trying to pull this off with a $100,000 budget. I mean, that is, I don't know how many times we need to emphasize it, but that is incredibly low, even by 1976 standards. So in order to do that, the production had to move at a pretty relentless pace. You mentioned that 24-hour marathon shoot, which is insane to me. But I mean, just shooting this movie, period, on a 20-day schedule, with the majority of the shoot taking place at night, like that takes its toll on the cast, because they're spending 3 weeks living in total darkness, like vampires. They're sleeping during the day, they're waking up and, shooting at night. And with a shoot this fast, there's no room for perfectionism. Carpenter usually had to move on after just 1 or 2 takes. They didn't have time or the physical film to shoot over and over and over. So shooting with just 1 or 2 takes, that forced the actors to stay sharp. Luckily, though, cinematographer Douglas Knapp was known for his efficiency. His speed was one of the primary reasons that he had been chosen for the job. Because he didn't have the time or the budget for complex lighting setups, he relied on high-speed film stock and available light, elements that contributed to this sort of raw documentary-style grit that the movie has.
Yeah, and a lot of that available light thing was, I remember in either the interview or the commentary, Carpenter talks a little bit about how they got into fights about some of the night stuff, because Carpenter wanted an indirect light with like a fog filter, because he was trying to get this like 1940s glow, and it felt like more of an old-fashioned look. Knapp was trying to debate with him about using realistic, like the emergency lights that were around the building in the station, and Carpenter was like vetoing that, saying because he wanted it to be creepier and more stylized and that sort of thing. So what Knapp ended up doing, he would have this like blue light pouring in from outside, top lights on the actors, and a fog filter to intentionally bleach the color and give it like this moody, old-fashioned glow, like what Carpenter was looking for. Another cool thing about this is that all of the actors, I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but the extras and all of this stuff, they're all like USC students who Carpenter says were mostly just there having fun, figuring out cool ways to die and throw fake blood on themselves. So when you watch the movie, you'll notice that the police officers and the guards, they kind of are unkempt. They have huge sideburns and long hair, which is totally against like the police regulations, especially at the time. And the reason is like, he said the actors just refused to cut their 70s hair.
Well, they're not getting paid anything, So.
Yeah, he was like, and I didn't have the money to force the issues. So we got a bunch of hippie cops.
Well, and a lot of the gang members also played like multiple gang members. They would just put on like a different headband or something, and then they would die and then change their hair or something, put on a different hat or a different headband, and then die again because they didn't have the money to get. I mean, I don't know how many gang members there are in this movie. There's a fuck ton of them. So they didn't have the money to get a different person every time. And I think a lot of the clothes, they would just like swap with each other. So like, and they didn't wash them because they had blood and shit on them. So like by the end of the movie, they just smelled fucking terrible.
He also mentions he learned a big lesson about night shoots too in LA, because he was just like, it's not warm. And that if you look close enough, he says like he can't help but notice like some of the actors' like breaths. You can see them even if they're supposed to be dead. You can see like a breath coming out of them.
Yeah, I mean, because they're shooting in November, and even in LA, which is Southern California, everybody thinks of it as warm and hot, but it's the desert. I mean, LA is essentially the desert, or was. And go watch Chinatown. But so it might be blazing hot during the day and then chilly at night. So that makes sense. But to make the gang members truly terrifying, Carpenter sort of wanted to move away from the realistic gang warfare tropes of the 1970s, the way that you would see gang members normally portrayed in movies of the time. Instead, he reached back to his love of horror and westerns to create something much more uncanny. Specifically, Carpenter directed the gang members to move with a relentless, silent, and almost supernatural persistence. They don't scream, they don't taunt, they don't retreat when their comrades fall. They simply keep coming. A trait that Carpenter would later admit was heavily influenced by George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Now, there are other parallels with Night of the Living Dead when you start looking at it through that lens, because once I read that he was, and it makes total sense. I mean, I don't remember what my further viewing was on our Night of the Living Dead episode, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Assault on Precinct 13, because they would make a great double feature, obviously. But when you start thinking about it that way, there are so many other parallels. I mean, obviously, Dwayne Jones and Austin Stoker are both black. That's an easy one, which was not common at the time. Even by 1975 is when they're shooting this. That wasn't necessarily common to have your lead character be a black policeman. Both films have a scene where someone tries to flee to a vehicle and the attempt goes horribly wrong. And the almost comatose condition of Kathy's father, once he gets into the police station, reminded me of Barbara in Night of the Living Dead.
Huh.
Like, she's comatose. She's just a vegetable, basically, the whole movie.
That's wild. Yeah, that's crazy how much there is in common.
Yeah, and then there's this almost like blink and you'll miss it sort of explanation for the gang's single-minded behavior in the film, blaming it on sunspots. They mention it like twice in the movie. Yeah, like there's like sunspotting. They mention it like very briefly. Nobody really comments on it. There's not like a conversation. I think it's on the radio at one point, and then somebody at the station mentions it. But that makes me think of the brief mention of radiation from a Venus probe as a possible reason for the dead returning in Night of the Living Dead, which is also never really discussed or explored. It's just something that Romero dropped in there as sort of like, maybe that's what it is, you know. Then there's that basement. You know, in Night of the Living Dead, there's a lot of runtime that's dedicated to Ben and Cooper arguing about whether or not it's a good strategy to go into the basement. In Assault on Precinct 13, Napoleon suggests to Bishop that the basement is the safest place to hide, and Bishop pushes back against it. But I think the gangs equals ghouls parallel is the most obvious that most people are going to notice when they watch this movie if they think about Night of the Living Dead. And when you watch it, to me, you also can't help but see the parallels between the gang members of Assault on Precinct 13 and the silent, unwavering presence of Michael Myers or of the ghosts from the fog, this like just faceless evil. It's something that you see over and over again in John Carpenter's movies, this idea of this faceless evil that doesn't have any real motivation or not a logical motivation. That's what it does. And that seems to be what's happening with the gang members here. In fact, I mean, Carpenter he purposely stripped away the personalities of the gang members here. Usually in an action movie, the villains have, names or motives, things that make them feel distinct. I thought about Hans Gruber's henchmen from Die Hard. Right. I might not know all of their names. I can't remember all their names, but they each have their distinct personalities. There's you remember each of them as distinct characters. But here, Carpenter keeps the gang members in silhouette, gives them almost no dialogue, and in doing so, he turned them into a faceless elemental force of nature rather than just like a group of people. It's just another form of that faceless evil. And this line of thinking is established right away in this Cholo ritual at the beginning of the film, where we see the gang members, they like cut their arms and then pour their blood into a bowl. And I think did they drink the blood during that? I can't remember, but they definitely like do some sort of weird blood ritual that turns them into this sort of cult-like collective. And once that oath is taken, it's almost like it transforms them. Like they're not individuals anymore. They're just a single murderous organism.
To be specific on that, I mean, that's like after the 4-minute mark, the Street Thunder gang literally produces zero clearly audible dialogue for the rest of the film, except for the Cholo blood oath, where one member says "for the six."
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, it's I think it's referencing the fallen comrades at the beginning.
So like
people that get gunned down by the cops.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. John Carpenter admits, by the way, that he didn't base his blood mixing ritual on like any kind of street gang stuff or anything. He was modeling it after old Western movies depicting Indians preparing to battle. Is what he was going for, and they're becoming blood brothers or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was his idea. But it's crazy. Imagine you can't get people that age to shut the fuck up in a movie theater for 2 hours, and here we are shooting them, setting them on fire. They stay quiet. They were embracing that dehumanization. Like Frank Doubleday, who played the white warlord guy, told Carpenter before shooting when Carpenter was trying to explain it to him, and Carpenter said, like, he told him, he's like, yeah, I don't want to play this as a man with a gun. I want to play it as a man who is a gun, who's a machine.
Wow.
Yeah, which all sounds like stuff we're going to see a lot, basically. Like
yeah, it really does. Speaking of guns, one of the most eerie technical choices in the film is the gang's use of silencers. I mean, in a typical siege movie like this, you expect the thunderous roar of gunfire. But by choosing suppressed weapons, Carpenter created a silent massacre, because you see glass shatter and bodies falling, but you only hear the rhythmic thwip of the bullets, and it makes the attackers feel like ghosts. It's really unsettling.
Yeah, what's even better is like they couldn't afford candy glass, so those squibs are blowing up on real glass.
Oh, wow.
So Carpenter, he says he thinks that's cool, and it just looks so much better anyway.
Yeah.
He said the initial sequence of the gang shooting up the station is one of his favorites, because he says he felt like it was something nobody had ever done before.
Yeah.
Just this like wanton destruction of the bullet holes, like just popping, but there's this eerie silence as it's happening. Like you don't know where it's coming from or what's happening. Which, by the way, he says all of that sequence, that first initial shootout, is Tommy Lee Wallace. So he says you did a fantastic job. So see, he gives credit where it's due.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the ethereal, like ghostly shattering of glass thing is just so neat. Yeah, brought to you by the fact that they couldn't afford sugar glass. So just packed real glass with explosives and blew it inward at his friends. That's what movie making is all about.
Yep. But it's also a great way to explain why nobody in the surrounding neighborhoods were alarmed by all the gunfire. And that works like within the plot of the movie. But logistically, while they're making the movie, it's kind of a stroke of genius, because by having the gang use silenced weapons, the crew didn't have to deal with the noise complaints, ear protection, or the massive permit headaches that they would run into if they wanted to fire loud blanks in a residential neighborhood at 3 a.m. So it saved them time, it saved them money, and it kept the real police from shutting down the shoot, and it just adds atmosphere to the movie. And it's also another trick that Carpenter borrowed, consciously or not, from George Romero. Because in Night of the Living Dead, part of what makes the dead so terrifying is their silence. This is something you can't say about all zombie movies. You can certainly say it about Night of the Living Dead. The absence of emotional register that we hear, that we expect from a human threat. The thwip of a suppressed weapon has that same quality, because it's mechanical, it's indifferent, it doesn't sound like something that a person does to another person, even like more so than gunfire, which you're kind of used to hearing gunfire. But like a silenced weapon still, like, psychologically throws you off as a viewer.
Yeah, and I think that especially works at like just seeing them stand out there all ominous at night, and then like there's just these silent like explosions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say it is interesting in the commentary, like he was talking about, that they are using, like with the shotgun particularly is what he's talking about. He was saying that, they're using full loads in the shotgun. So he said the stunt catching and shooting is more dangerous than it looks. Like they're full loads, and if you stand in front of that shotgun and it fires, even though it's blanks, you'll probably get killed.
Yeah.
He was saying they had to be extra careful, because he's like, these aren't stuntmen. He's like, these are my college buddies. So I prefer, they don't die. So he says in one instance, I think it's when Stoker first walks into the chief's office and he's like loading that shotgun to put in a box, which Carpenter even points out. He's like, why is he loading a shotgun to put it away in a box? He's like, well, because I need it later. And this establishes that. But he recalls one incident, though, where they were loading it and accidentally misfired. And Deborah Hill was like standing right next to it.
Jesus.
And went off like next to her ear. And so
wow.
He put it as, quote, it upset her to no end.
Yeah. I don't blame her. Wow. Well, when it came to casting the game, Carpenter made a very specific, very deliberate choice. He made them a diverse group of actors: Black, white, Latino, Asian. He didn't want this to be a racial conflict. He wanted to avoid the optics of race war and instead focus on a generational or societal us versus them dynamics. Even, if you look at the end credits, the leaders are nameless. They're just listed as like warlords. There's like Black warlord, Latino warlord, white warlord. So he didn't even give the leaders names. But this is also where the Western influence gets a little complicated, Because by stripping away their names and their individual identities to avoid racial coding, Carpenter was leaning directly into the, quote, Indians over the hill trope from the very John Ford movies that he grew up on. And in those old Westerns, the attacking force was often just a faceless, dehumanized wave of violence designed to test the heroes. It's a fascinating bit of like cinematic friction because Carpenter was using a progressive casting strategy to navigate a modern world while simultaneously nodding to a genre convention that was never as innocent as it seemed.
I think it's just that he likes the movies he likes. He probably understands that. I think he's just not interested at this point in writing a sociology paper. And so he's just like, I'm just trying to make a shoot 'em up and I want to get it done properly so I can show that I'm a competent filmmaker and I can make more movies and more money. And he's officially on the record stating that he made the gang multi-ethnic precisely because he, quote, didn't want any political or social messages at all.
Yeah.
He wasn't aiming for a, quote, generational statement. He said, had I wanted the gang to be realistic, to make some kind of social comment, it probably would have been either maybe an all Chicano or an all black gang. I deliberately made it racially mixed, not being specific about it, keeping it a little shadowy and indistinct. All he cared about was he just wanted to represent totally irrational, senseless evil. He wanted them to behave like dehumanized supernatural forces like Night of the Living Dead. And so I keep reading reviews as I'm researching this about people trying to read the gang as some sort of, I don't know, a radical group, or I saw one that called it like Marxist revolutionary force or something. And I mean, most scholars point out that like he's literally painting this gang as the exact opposite of something ideological. He's simply trying to do the embodiment of arbitrary, terrifying evil. It's what Michael Myers is supposed to be later, like we've said. And honestly, over and over again, Carpenter says that. It's like, I just wanted to make a fun, terrifying movie about archetypal heroes fighting for their lives against faceless enemies. I don't know. I think it's nice when you think about it. He needed an equal opportunity slaughter, and it's inspiring. Yeah. It's a beautiful multicultural coalition comes together to ruthlessly murder a little girl for which she's getting ice cream. And you don't get that in Hollywood now.
But the thing is, you've got that murder of their comrades at the beginning of the movie by the police, right? So that's what seems to trigger them doing the blood oath, which turns them into these mindless killing machines. But there is a motivation there, right? It's that their friends were killed. Their other gang members were killed by the police, cold-blooded, like they were slaughtered, essentially. Like they were just gunned down, and then they made up this lie about them that there was an armed shootout. There wasn't. They were in a hallway, and the police opened fire on them. That's what happened. That's what we see at the beginning of the movie. So there is a little bit of a motivation at the beginning, but by doing that like blood ritual, that blood oath thing, it's almost like they're like, okay, we're just going to get revenge on everybody, not just the cops, but anybody we come in contact with. And something about that blood ritual turns them into these people who don't care who they kill. And it's never explained. The blood oath thing's never explained. But clearly something goes down there.
That's a good point. Everything that they do from then on, it all begins with them getting gunned down first, so they're retaliating. They're roaming the like suburbs too. So there is a little bit of this us versus them thing, of this like lower class versus middle class sort of thing going on there a little bit. Whether Carpenter intended that or not, I don't know. But like when they're looking for trouble, when they find the ice cream man, they're not looking for trouble in South Central. They're looking for trouble in the suburbs. That's interesting that they did that. I halfway believe that just is because that's where it looked good for them to shoot.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that scene. So that blood oath is, very early in the film, kind of sets the mood of the film. But the scene that really provides the plot's engine is this shocking, cold-blooded murder of a little girl. And it's really at the beginning of the film's opening act. Like if you're doing by the 3-act structure, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, that's where this happens. It's very, very well structured as a screenplay. But in this sequence, you've got a father played by Martin West and his young daughter, Kathy. They're lost in a residential neighborhood. They're looking, I think they're going to his mom's house or something. Is what it sounds like. But when Kathy, who's played by Kim Richards, they stop to use a payphone so they can get directions. She sees an ice cream man there and she goes to get get some ice cream. And the ice cream man's very like wary because he's seen this gang of like suspicious guys driving by multiple times.
Well, yeah, I was going to say they're circling him like a shark.
Yeah. So he gives her the ice cream anyway, even after trying to shoo her away because he's worried about them. And then she comes back to complain about being given the wrong flavor. And when she does that, a gang member who's already killed the ice cream man by this point casually walks up and just shoots her right in the chest, this little girl.
Here's your vanilla twist, bitch.
Yeah. In 1976, killing a child on screen, especially in such a cold, graphic, and unearned way, was a massive taboo. I mean, it still is, honestly. Killing a kid is, but it happens more now in movies than it did then. Like, this was truly shocking at the time. But what makes it genuinely disturbing rather than merely shocking is the way that Carpenter shoots it. Because there's no build-up, there's no like score swell, there's no lingering reaction shot asking for the audience's grief. Carpenter cuts away almost immediately, and the scene doesn't pause to acknowledge really what just happened. It simply moves on exactly the way this gang member does. And that indifference, the gang member's indifference, and thus John Carpenter's, the film's indifference, is the real weapon here against the audience. Now, this scene was filmed near a small corner store in a residential area of Los Angeles, and that sunny, mundane, suburban feel of the street is vital to the scene because it hammers home the idea that the Street Thunder gang doesn't just exist in the dark or in the ghetto or whatever. They're not just hanging out in the seedier parts of town. They can strike anywhere at any time. Carpenter is immediately establishing that the world of this film is dangerous and that absolutely anybody is fair game. But it's also kind of a subtle homage to Carpenter's beloved Westerns, because in those films, the innocent is often the character whose death justifies the extreme violence of the climax. And by killing Kathy, Carpenter ensures the audience is fully on board with the heroes doing whatever it takes to stop every single gang member that tries to breach the precinct.
I think this is the best explanation of what we were talking about earlier. Like, you nail the indifference. What's even wilder is where that tone comes from. He's not inventing this out of thin air. He based it on a true story. He had read about a real life incident, he says, where a youth gang was loitering at a bus stop. And when the bus pulled up, one gang member casually announced he was going to kill the next person that got off the bus. And it was a little girl who stepped out, and he shot her. And then they got in their car and drove away.
Wow.
Yeah. He said he was so horrified by the absolute like psychotic senselessness of something like that, that's what he was thinking of when he was designing the Street Thunder gang. It was to embody that exact, like, what he called irrational evil. Even take it back to like when we talked about his childhood and the stories about the people he knew that drove around the black neighborhoods just shooting people just randomly. Yeah. Or the guy hitting another guy with his car. That kind of stuff was what was frightening to him. He does say, like, on one hand, he thought it might be like a passable scene because in his exploitation mind, like the shot through the ice cream was sort of absurd.
Yeah.
And he talks about that, like, you don't see that much. It's more the idea of it that's supposed to be horrifying.
I mean, you see blood splatter on her.
Yeah, that's
on her
true.
chest.
Yeah. This I guess to him at the time, maybe not much, but yeah, he said essentially, he's like, I'm going for the dramatic trick of, he says, I need the bad guys to be bad. Once I pull that trigger, see what I did there? He's thinking there's no coming back now. You cannot have sympathy for these villains at all. Yeah. There's no chance. Well, here's a quote from when he's talking about what inspired the movie. He tells that story I just told earlier, and he says, so what kind of people will do that in broad daylight? I mean, they don't care about anything. It's completely senseless. It's psychotic. So I thought, well, I'm going to make my villains that way because to me, that's the frightening thing. To think I'm just going to be walking down the street and get shot for nothing. I was discussing the character with the actor who plays a gang member and shoots the little girl, and he gave me the best explanation of the villain. This is what we were talking about earlier, too. He said, I don't want to play this as a man with a gun. I want to play it as a man who is a gun. That's what I wanted these people to be like. Killing machines with the mechanics of the trigger. They just don't care, which is why this character, when he gets out of the car to confront the dead child's father, just stands there and gets shot down.
Yeah.
It's all just totally irrational and senseless, all of this evil.
Yeah, and that it ups the stakes because you then, as an audience member, you are going like, wow, somebody's got to take care of these guys. And they're clearly willing to just murder an innocent child, who did nothing. She was just getting ice cream for no reason. just murdered an innocent child. So we need we are down with our heroes doing whatever they need to do to get rid of these guys. It instantly puts you on the hero's side, even if the heroes have to go to extremes to do so. If you look at an old Western movie, look at like The Searchers, a John Ford movie, one of the greatest Westerns ever made. And in that movie, there's a character named Martha, who is the sister-in-law of John Wayne's character, Ethan. And her death happens off screen early in the film, but you see the aftermath, you see her homestead, and the kind of brutal nature of the raid on her homestead and her subsequent murder serves as the fuel for the whole movie. So it transforms John Wayne's character's mission from this simple rescue into a decade-long obsessive crusade for vengeance. It's a roaring rampage of revenge. Without the loss of that specific innocent character at the start, the audience wouldn't be able to stomach the dark, borderline villainous actions that Ethan, John Wayne's character, has to take throughout the rest of the film. So it gets you on board right away. Now, nobody in this really turns villainous by the end. Like our heroes don't get turned into monsters. But if they did, I think the audience would be okay with that because we've seen what the gang members are willing to do.
All bets are off. But because of this death, you have zero sympathy.
Exactly.
You can't turn it around at that point.
Now, here's a little fun fact trivia for you. Some of our listeners might recognize Kim Richards, the little girl who plays Kathy. At the time, she was actually a Disney star. She had just starred in the 1975 hit Escape to Witch Mountain. So I'm not sure if that movie was out at the time they were filming this, because they're filming this in 1975. So if so, it might have just come out. If you imagine audiences seeing this the next year, 1976, and they're seeing a Disney kid get blasted by a silencer-equipped handgun, not only would the audience be on board already because they're seeing an innocent child get killed, but they're seeing a Disney child, a kid that just started a Disney movie, get killed. So that's even adding an extra layer of shock to the audiences.
We can only hope that somewhere there was a group of children who convinced their parent to take them to this movie because the girl from Witch Mountain was in here.
They heard about it.
Yeah.
And they were traumatized forever. And also, Kim Richards, I'm sure some of you might know this, but she would later become one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Well, I mean, even more trivia, if you want it, is she appears there and leaves the show for a little bit, comes back later, but she's as more of a guest role. But she's there because she's also with one of the other housewives, as her sister, Kyle Richards, who is Lindsay Wallace in Halloween.
They're sisters?
They're sisters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I knew she was also a Real Housewife. I did not know that they were sisters. I didn't even think about them having the same last name.
Yeah. Kyle also, by the way, she's in the lady yelling at cat meme. So she's not the screaming woman. She's the woman holding back the screaming woman.
And she's not the cat.
And she's not the cat.
No.
If there was any confusion there.
Well, she's also in the Halloween remake, right? Did she?
Yeah. She comes back.
Or not the remake, but the David Gordon Green one.
Yeah. I think I also need to add the brilliant zero budget practical effect they used to pull the shot off that takes out Kim. They didn't use like a standard squib for her.
I was wondering about that because that seems dangerous for a child.
Yeah. They hid an air hose inside the actual like ice cream cone apparently and filled it with red dye, and they just like blew it at her. And so
that's why you don't see the actual impact. You just see the splatter of blood. But it happens so quick that you don't really register that unless you're looking for it.
I just thought that was kind of neat. And as frightening or taboo as that whole thing is, for what it's worth, he does say that Kim Richards was a little frightened at first because she had obviously never done anything quite like this. So she wasn't sure. But he said, well, she got hit with the fake blood for the first time. He was like, she thought dying was really fun. And she was like super into it.
Well, as shocking as this scene was for the audience, it was even more of a problem for the ratings board. So when Carpenter first submitted Assault on Precinct 13 to the MPAA, they slapped it with a dreaded X rating. Now, in 1976, really all throughout the run of the X rating, that was a commercial death sentence. Most newspapers wouldn't carry ads for X-rated movies. Many theaters would not touch them, would not play them. Now, usually the MPAA, when they give you a rating, they can be pretty vague about what needs to change in order to secure a better rating. A lot of times they won't tell you at all. They're just like, you just need to recut it. Or it's just a vibe that we don't like. And so you have to figure out how to fix that. But that wasn't the case here. The board was explicit in what needed to go, and it was that shot of Kathy being murdered. They told Carpenter that if he cut the frame of the actual impact, that what we're talking about, the blood splatter, if they cut that shot, then they would reconsider the film for an R rating. Now, Carpenter, who was serving as his own editor, he was using a pseudonym John T. Chance, which is an homage to John Wayne's sheriff in Rio Bravo. That's the sheriff's name. But he told the board that he would comply, but Carpenter has never been one to bow to authority. So instead of actually cutting his film, he performed a bit of indie sleight of hand. He put together a single clean version of the scene specifically for the board to review. The MPAA watched that one print, signed off on an R rating, and then went on their way. But Carpenter and his distributors made sure that every other print that actually hit theaters across the country was the original uncensored cut. He gave the censors what they wanted to see in the screening room, but he gave the audiences exactly what he intended for them to see on the screen. And it was this kind of classic hustle that protected the most important pivot point in the entire story.
John's still pretty new at this point, so he doesn't know all of the tricks of the trade. And apparently this is a pretty classic one for low-budget films in general at the time. And he had gotten the idea he keeps talking about the distributor, but I don't think he ever names directly, but it sounds like it might have been Erwin Yablans who gave him the idea and just told him, like, this is how you trick them.
Yeah.
Like, do it this way.
You got to admire his balls here, because that's a hell of a move. And I'm not entirely sure how you could get away with that without repercussions. And it's one of those stories that, like, I don't know how true it is. It could be a legend that, that Carpenter's building for it, because he does love to tell that story. But Carpenter also seems like a guy who likes to build his own myth a little bit. And this definitely gives him a bit of that, like, outlaw cred that he seems to really like. Because logistically, like, this would be a nightmare to actually pull off. But regardless, what is true is that this scene is absolutely integral to the film. This scene is what literally sets the plot in motion.
I mean, sometimes when he talks about it now, he says he probably wouldn't do it quite that way anymore, like kill the little girl so viciously. Like, yeah, for somebody who says he thinks you don't really see anything, it's supposed to be the idea of it. I saw him in a couple of interviews, like, seemed to have like kind of a hesitance about, you probably wouldn't go like that.
I don't know, but I mean, you could have cut the point of impact where we actually see, the blood splatter all over her dress, but I feel like it would lose some of its impact, because by showing us, like, the full scope of the murder, Carpenter's telling us all the normal rules are out the window. Like I said before, nobody's safe. It establishes these gang members not as mere criminals, but as monsters, as evil. Like, we've seen them do the unthinkable. If they're going to do that to an innocent kid, what would they be willing to do to the adult characters if they were to get inside that precinct?
Like you said, I mean, it's a pretty pivotal point of the whole movie. And you really need to feel it, because it's important that, well, like what he even said in the commentaries and stuff, like, you can't feel sympathy for this gang. I was just looking it up, just trying to get, like, the exact context of where I was seeing that from. And I did have it written down here that he had expressed regret over how he had shot her. He said that it was pretty horrible at the time, and reflected that he was a little young and stupid when he made that creative decision, is what he said in one interview. He said that having children of his own kind of changed his perspective a little bit. He says he isn't sure that he would do it that exact same way again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is nothing compared to something by 5 years later, Lucio Fulci and the Beyond, the little girl that gets her, like, head blown off, basically.
Yeah, so a Serbian film.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Don't spoil it.
I haven't either. I haven't seen it.
Anyway,
we're gonna watch it.
I'm gonna watch it at some point. I just gotta be in the mood.
Right.
That hasn't happened yet. Well, with his edit locked, it was time for the final piece of the puzzle, which was the music. Now, as he had done on Dark Star, Carpenter wrote the musical score himself, this time assisted by a guy named Dan Wyman, and working on a very tight schedule. Carpenter composed the entire score in 3 days, which is insane to me. But that constraint may have been the best thing that could have happened to it, because 3 days doesn't leave a lot of room for second guessing or overworking. It kind of forces economy. And that economy produced something that couldn't have been labored into existence. He used a very primitive synthesizer setup to create a main theme that is essentially a cold, relentless electronic heartbeat.
What's crazy is there's even conflicting times the story gets told. If you look on, like, Wikipedia or some places, like, it says that he had 3 days, but in that interview with the guy from Animal Collective, like, when he's talking about it there, he mentions that he had 3 days to record Halloween. And he says, which was a big improvement from Assault, which I had like a day.
Well,
so he could.
I mean, in the interview on the Assault Blu-ray, he specifically says 3 days. So I think John Carpenter's memory is just a little wonky.
Yeah, well, he's old.
Yeah.
So to go even further, though, one thing I did want to mention is like this isn't some just like elegant minimalist decision they're making here with this thing. I mean, synthesizers, he talks a little bit about it in the commentary as well, that like at this time, it's not like synths now where you like just adjust on the fly and like, just like press the buttons. It was like labor. He was saying Dan Wyman was the USC electronic music teacher.
Yeah.
And he owned massive tube amplifier synths. But that old technology, every time you want a new sound, you have to stop and tune several banks of synthesizers, which takes like a huge amount of time.
Yeah, you don't have a bunch of like presets or anything. You've got these modular synthesizers they're using are massive for one thing. But yeah, every little oscillator had to be hand tuned. They had to patch every cable every time they wanted a new sound. So if you had gotten a tone at like 10 in the morning that you really liked, and then like at 4 o'clock later that day, you're like, oh, I want to do that again. You had to remember where the knobs were turned. or had it recorded, written down somewhere.
Yeah, that's just crazy to me to think about. And Carpenter even admits, like, he's like, I had no idea what Dan was doing. I could hit the keys on the keyboard. He's like, I could do that part. Also, he says Tommy Lee Wallace helped him perform the score too, because of course he made him do that too.
Yeah, he did a little bit of everything. But it's an incredible score. I think it is a bit of a masterpiece. I mean, it's repetitive, it's driving, it's anxious. It's almost like the sound of a clock ticking down on this group of people who are rapidly running out of time. And even more importantly, for our journey through Carpenter's career, this score is sort of the blueprint. Because when you hear that driving, repetitive synth line, you're hearing the direct ancestor of what he would do just 2 years later with the even more iconic Halloween score. He was learning how to use the synthesizer as a weapon, a way to create an atmosphere of dread that was both modern and primal. There's something about this score I think it's next to Halloween. I think it's probably his best music score. I think it's incredible. And the main theme, even today, is considered one of the most influential pieces of electronic film music ever recorded. It's kind of the perfect example of how a low budget can force a director to create something iconic out of pure necessity.
You can call it a minimalist masterpiece. And I agree. I fucking love all of his music, but Carpenter himself is brutally honest about his composing process. Like he openly admits, like with this one, that the main title theme, he's like, it says it's shamelessly plagiarized. He based the melody and the chord progression directly on Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song.
Yeah, I can see that.
He said, yeah, and he said, and also Lalo Schifrin's score for Dirty Harry, which he says he thinks is also ripping off Immigrant Song. People ask him about his legacy as a composer and all this stuff. He's just like, I'm just cheap and fast, riff driven.
So he doesn't. Come on, John, give yourself some credit, buddy.
And because you're right about the influence, and the absolute best trivia for me too about this is because it's essentially like a drum machine and it's got this pop synth riff going over. It became a massive influence on hip hop, getting sampled by like African Bambaataa, Dead Prez, and Tricky. They've all sampled this song.
Wow!
And even weirder, in 1990 it was reworked into this massive UK charting rave anthem that was called Hardcore Uproar.
Whoa. Have you listened to it?
Yeah. And my favorite though is in 1978, a Trinidadian singer named Jimmy Chambers actually recorded a vocal version of the theme with full lyrics. And it's called You Can't Fight It. And if you like a little funk and you haven't heard it, you should just pause and listen to it because it's fucking sick.
Oh, cool. So I want you to, when we're done recording, I need you to send me that link because I want to listen to it. Well, when I listen to that score and I look at what's happening on screen, I can't help but notice that Carpenter's not really scoring an action movie. That's a score for a horror movie. And having obviously the benefit of knowing exactly where John Carpenter's career goes after this, I find it fascinating that while Assault is usually shelved in the action section, it's secretly one of his first great horror films. Because, I mean, it has action beats, sure, but the way Carpenter depicts the gang has no basis in the history of the action genre. This goes back earlier to what we touched on with the casting stuff. By making them nameless and faceless, he isn't just treating this gang like criminals. He's treating them like almost like a force of nature. He's treating them exactly the same way that George Romero treated the undead in Night of the Living Dead, like we said earlier. And like Romero's zombies, the members of this gang are elemental. Like they're not criminals in the way that audiences might have expected at the time. They're not after drugs or money specifically. They're not after something tangential, you know. They're more like a natural disaster, or they're like the pod people from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. They're like the shark from Jaws, you know. They're mindless killing machines with one intent, which is to cause harm. And this is, I think, the first, but certainly not the last time that we see Carpenter's interest in this force that just can't be explained and can't be reckoned with or reasoned with.
To me, this is like the biggest, most important part about this movie is just like you can see the process of what's to come. Like you can see the building blocks for where he's going to go. Because I don't know, I feel like unlike somebody like David Lynch, for instance, who came out with he came out of the gate with Eraserhead. You know, and some people to this day will tell you that Eraserhead is their favorite David Lynch movie still, and that was like the beginning, one. I don't feel like many people. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think a lot of people say like Assault on Precinct 13 is like the best John Carpenter movie or their favorite John Carpenter movie or anything like that. And I could. Because I've been watching it, and it's like he knows it too. Like he, in the commentary, points out stuff. Like we talk about the Panavision. He talks about like how obsessed he was with like finally having that and just being able to shoot the wide shots. And he's like, I'd get a little lost in how much I would film because he's like, even with dialogue between two characters, just like how much space you have to work with. You can have like the back of this person's head, their face over here, and just like the different angles you could take and the different ways you could use it. He's like, I would get a little caught up in that, but I didn't know how to edit it really. And he talks about like the pace of the movie and in the commentary that he feels like there's scenes that he let go on so long because he felt like I got to shoot and run this out, so I make sure I have enough. And he's like, he's like, if I were making it as who I am today, there are parts of this. Like he was like, I would pace this faster. He's like, or I would cut this in a different way. So it's interesting to like hear him do that, even with like the one-liners and stuff. There's like, you know, like I remember particularly when Charles Cyphers is talking to Napoleon. You know, like they're in the bus. And talking in some of the dialogue going back and forth. I think it's the line where he's saying something about like, I've learned that my days are like women. They all like come and go so fast or something like that. And anyway, he's just like, he makes a comment there. He's like, well, you can tell the dialogue is written by a man who's young and stupid. But he's like, you know, we were learning or something like that, you know? And so anyway, it just feels like it's a guy trying to just prove he can make a movie. And I think a lot of people would watch this movie. I feel like I think it's a little slow. Or
man, I don't
know. Yeah. I'm fine with it all. I'm just saying like, I can see where some people like wouldn't get a handle on this.
Well, it's more about the atmosphere. That's why, like, even though it's the sort of plot on paper sounds like an action movie, like the atmosphere is the atmosphere of a horror movie.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And a lot of that is from the Romero influence, obviously. But as we mentioned before, Romero was only one of the major influences on the film. The other was, of course, Rio Bravo and Howard Hawks, the guy who directed Rio Bravo. It's almost like Carpenter pulled from Romero for the villains and Hawks for the heroes, is what it feels like.
Well, yeah, that's a great point. And actually, it reminds me of something. Sorry to jump in, but that's what he says. It's like the scene where they're coming out of the police station too. He even mentions like when they're first like transferring, like they go get Napoleon and the other prisoners, and they're like leading them down the ramp to the bus or whatever. He's talking about watching this. He's like, I filmed a lot of this, and he's like, and it felt right at the time. He's like, but I was making a Western. And he's like, and my pacing is that of a Western. And he's like, so like he's like, I didn't know a lot about editing and pacing as much then. He's like, he's like, I could watch this now and see like, I'm thinking of Rio Bravo or something, and like how long this scene goes and how it's shot. Anyway, just interesting.
I mean, knowing how much influence Rio Bravo had on this film and on Carpenter in general, I decided to watch it because this was one of those movies that had somehow always eluded me. I had never seen Rio Bravo. I mean, I knew of its reputation. Obviously, it's considered one of the greatest Westerns of all time. But I'd never sat down to watch it. And man, I'm glad I did, because it is incredible. You watched it too, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we bought a 4K. We both we double dipped on the 4K, remember?
Yeah. Was that your first time seeing it though, or had you seen it before?
Oh yeah. I don't think I'd ever seen it before.
Man, did you enjoy it?
I did. Yeah, I had a good time with it.
Fucking great. I think it's amazing. I mean, instantly shot to near the top of like my favorite Westerns. But watching it, I think you can really recognize what Carpenter was doing, because he wasn't directly like recreating the film, but its influence is definitely all over this movie, from specific beats in the action to the way it treats its characters. I mean, take Ethan and Napoleon, for example. Now, in a typical action movie, they'd be at each other's throats the whole time, even if they begrudgingly decided to team up for the greater good. Like, I don't know, Hobbs and Shaw, right? But here they operate on a level of mutual professional respect. Like they don't need much to trust each other. You know, you can, they just need to know that the other person is competent. And you can kind of see it in how they count how many shells they have left, the way they move in sync. And of course, and like you said, you mentioned this early on, but in that shared cigarette, which is a classic Hawksian trope that signals that two people are on the same wavelength without them having to say anything. And then at the end of the movie, I love the final, I think it's the very last shot of the movie, but Carpenter lets them leave the station walking side by side, like as equals.
The thing about the characters really stands out too, because I feel like I was reading this somewhere when I was reading a little bit about Rio Bravo, that they talk about how like one thing people don't understand, like going into like a Howard Hawks one, that makes him a little different than like some other Westerns, is like that I feel like somebody described it as like he's also just doing a hangout movie.
Oh yeah.
Like it's, you know, like his characters are like, you're supposed to get invested in like who they are, their individual personalities. And so he has these main people, but you get invested in who the main people are hanging out. And then it's as much about whatever plot point is going to happen outside as it is like you just being happy to be in the room with these people just chilling.
Well, I mean, one of the standout scenes in Rio Bravo is just Ricky Nelson singing a song. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like they let him do an entire song in the middle of like they stop the movie in the middle of the movie and just do an entire song, and it's great.
They do two, don't they? I think like Ricky Nelson sings one, and then him and Dean Martin
doing the song. That's the one I'm talking about specifically. I don't know why I didn't mention Dean Martin, but that scene where first of all they just cut into this jail cell. I think they're in the jail cell or in the sheriff's station or whatever. And Dean Martin's like laying back on the cot. He just starts singing, and first of all, it's the only time he sings in the movie, and you're just kind of taken aback by just how. I mean, Dean Martin's a very good singer. So, like, his voice is incredible. And then him and Ricky Nelson start singing a song together, and the movie just stops for them to sing this entire song. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie. And most directors wouldn't put that in the movie, but this is a movie about kind of the characters. You're right. And I mean, and the thing is, Howard Hawks has a he's got he wasn't strictly a Western director. I mean, he did this, he did Rio Lobo as well. But he also did His Girl Friday. He did Bringing Up Baby. These are like classic screwball comedies, like some of the greatest screwball comedies ever made. And the dialogue kind of whips like that. So Rio Bravo has that same, like when you listen to the dialogue, especially the stuff with Angie Dickinson's character, like it's very screwball comedy. Like it's just whip smart dialogue delivered fast. And like, it's more than just what you would find in most other Western movies of the time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and when we're talking about the Hawksian elements of Assault on Precinct 13, since I brought up Angie Dickinson, I mean, you do have to talk about that Hawksian woman because she's one of my favorite parts of Rio Bravo. Like, she is this woman in a world of men, but she holds her own and she never minces words. And Lori Zimmer playing Lee is a perfect example of this type of female character because she's never a damsel in distress. She's not just like a secretary waiting to be rescued. Like, she's tough. She's got this dry wit to her. She is incredibly capable. I mean, she knows more about what's going on than anyone else in the room, it seems like, most of the time. Because Bishop is like new. This is new territory for him. She's the expert.
That's why we were talking about her earlier. I was like, it's such a bummer that it's that she didn't stick with it or thought that this was bad, apparently, because the second you meet her in the movie, something about her face, like she just looks like she's got it together. And she's never at any point, it doesn't seem like she's completely ever thrown off or like not that she's not worried, but like that she
doesn't let that
prepared to do whatever.
Right, yeah. Exactly. I mean, I mentioned earlier where she gets shot in the arm and she just she barely flinches. She definitely doesn't scream or faint or anything like that. She doesn't cry about it. She just keeps doing the job. And then she just kicks a guy in the nuts right after that. Like immediately. She just kicks a guy right in the balls. Like, this is a character who fits in with the men because in this world, gender doesn't matter nearly as much as whether or not you can hold your own when the windows start breaking. And she holds her own the entire movie. So by putting these types of honorable professionals from an old school Western inside a gritty, nihilistic 70s urban nightmare, Carpenter creates this really great like friction. It's a battle between a group of people trying to maintain their humanity through their work and a nameless, faceless enemy that wants to take it all from them. And this is an element of Carpenter's work that we will see over and over and over again through literally every movie that we're talking about in this series. And you mentioned it earlier, but this is also, speaking to things that are going to pop up again and again, this is where that archetype of the Carpenter hero is sort of born. Napoleon Wilson is that prototype. That he is the cynical, quiet loner who, despite being like a criminal or an outcast, ends up being the most reliable person in the room when everything else is falling apart, when the world is ending. He is a direct ancestor of, you mentioned Snake Plissken earlier, but also MacReady from The Thing. Yeah. He is a direct ancestor to both of those characters. And if you want to go further into movies we're going to talk about on future series, I mean, Jack Burton. Pretty much all the characters that Kurt Russell are going to play. He is the prototype for Kurt Russell is what he is. Now, Gary, you've seen a lot of Carpenter's films, probably even more times than I have. Did these recurring elements, did they start standing out to you a lot watching Assault this time, like with this sort of critical eye that we try to bring? Because when we watch things for the podcast, even if we've seen them before, I feel like we watch them a little bit more intently, maybe. And then things start standing out, especially when you're thinking about what we're going to talk about and whatnot.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like if you know that you're going in, you're like, okay, well, I got to think about John Carpenter as a director. Like, what does he do in movies?
Yeah.
And so you start watching this when it's hard not to notice all of the things. Like, I don't think ever before we started doing this research, I'd thought of things like even the nameless, faceless, like, villain.
Yeah, I remember you texting me like when you were watching it or you had just finished watching it or whatever, and you're like, wow, that's like Michael Myers. You're like, yeah, it is like Michael Myers. And I had not thought of that really either until I started thinking about, elements that what am I going to see him do again kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that goes back to the childhood, the terrible stories that I mentioned and that sort of thing. I think because of John Carpenter, I think because of his life experiences and those sort of things, it's the things that he's afraid of or the things that he focuses in on or the things that he can't understand. So like, again, the evil, that sort of thing. Yeah. The senseless violence, like not understanding. That's what he thinks is scary in a horror movie. But also going back to those stories, I think it's even worth noting that you have, most importantly, probably Austin Stoker in this movie as Bishop, but even I would say Tony Burton as Wells they're two, competent black men in this role that at the time, I think those weren't happening a lot, like constantly. And again, you mentioned Romero doing that, and it was a huge deal for Romero. That's like one of the legacies of Night of the Living Dead. But I think that Carpenter deliberately seems to sometimes play some. I mean, it's the bad point when like Halloween's next, and I don't even remember if there's a black person in Halloween, but they're in suburban Illinois, so maybe they don't have black people there. I don't know, but Carpenter seems to, I guess where I'm going with this is he seems to place black characters like in these roles a good bit. Yeah, I obviously I'm thinking of Keith David, and how like a guy like Keith David is going to use and he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't monopolize,
especially in They Live.
Well, yeah, They Live and The Thing.
Yeah.
So so Keith David is. I think what he's doing to maybe put it more bluntly is I think what he's doing is he's trying, whether or not he realizes it, sometimes it feels like he's trying to make sure that it's more about like anybody can be a hero, anybody can be competent. Like it's just it's strictly defined by your behavior and your duty, like in the moment, like what you're doing. And so because obviously we talked about the gang is also like multi-ethnic, so I'm not saying like Stoker's not a DEI hire, that's not what I'm saying. but he's you know what I mean. I think he is conscious of that still somehow.
Yeah, I think so as well. Yeah. Well, when Assault on Precinct 13 first opened in the U.S. in November of 1976, it was met with a collective shrug. Tepid reviews and even worse box office numbers made it look like Carpenter's first real professional outing was going to be a wash. The initial American reviews were, let's call them cautiously dismissive. Variety was typical of the time, calling the film pokey in its opening half and noting that the only thing that would save it was the novelty of the gang's blood oath, which they figured would be enough for the gory-minded to assure acceptance. They saw it as a functional B-movie, but they completely missed the craft behind it. And that's not entirely surprising, because in 1976, American film criticism was still largely uncomfortable with the idea that genre filmmaking could be serious art. The argument had been made in France and Britain for decades. The auteur framework had been applied to Hawks and Ford in the pages of Cahiers du Cinema since the 1950s, and they were just seen as like genre workhorses in the U.S., but that transatlantic critical conversation hadn't yet fully crossed the ocean, and Carpenter seemed to be paying the price for it. In fact, Carpenter has famously been quoted saying, "In France, I'm an auteur. In Germany, I'm a filmmaker. In the UK, I'm a horror director. In the US, I'm a bum." And other critics were even harsher. Some dismissed it as pure trash, failing to see that Carpenter was actually elevating the trash aesthetic into something approaching high art. To American critics of the mid-1970s, the movie was just a bit too mean, too bleak, and too cheap.
They were the only ones who didn't get it. Like, he faced two other screenings that I feel like perfectly illustrate how misunderstood the film was. Like, first, he took the movie, he says, like, back to his hometown in Bowling Green and screened it for his old high school buddies and teachers. And he said that they had no idea what to do with that because if anything, it was too violent for them.
Yeah.
If they had anything to say at all. But he said then the second was he went to a drive-in theater to watch it. And he said that it was a total disaster because he said, earlier we were talking about the lighting, and he said he had intentionally voted or vetoed the emergency lighting to keep the precinct kind of more set up in like a dark and moody ambient light kind of thing. But he said the lights from the drive-in completely washed out the screen.
Like from people's cars?
From people's cars.
Are you supposed to turn your headlights off in a drive-in? You're supposed to turn your headlights off.
I feel like, but he said that, well, all he says, I assumed it was the cars because he said the ambient light of the drive-in completely washed out the screen. Like you couldn't see anything. And so he left like depressed.
Bummer.
And so he spends all his money on this Panavision to craft these like gorgeous, terrifying like shadows and everything else. And he sees it at the drive-in and like the Pinto next to him like makes it so you can't watch it really. But I assumed that's what it was, but maybe you're right. Maybe you're supposed to turn off your headlights. So maybe it's just the lights in general around the place or something.
Yeah, or maybe it wasn't fully dark. I don't know. It's weird though. Or maybe it was just a drive-through or a drive-in that didn't enforce the no headlights rule.
Maybe. Well, silly bastards. But back to the premiere, the initial premiere, the harshest reaction that night didn't come from a newspaper critic. It came from our old friend, Dan O'Bannon.
Oh, yeah. Do tell. A cranky bastard. I don't know who's cranky.
People around him said that they felt like he was secretly like envious of Carpenter having any success ever. So this was just kind of par for the course for him. But he attended the premiere and said that he was completely disgusted by it.
Oh, for sure.
They said he walked right up to Carpenter and said that his disdain for human beings would be serviced if he'd just make a film without people in it.
Wow. The guy who made Dead and Buried and Return of the Living Dead? That guy?
Right. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he said that he felt that the Carpenter's casual disregard for the character's humanity perfectly mirrored how easily Carpenter had discarded their friendship.
Wow. Well, that's a good line, though. That's a good line.
Yeah. So anyway, Dan O'Bannon, he should cool down, Dan.
Well, he's dead now, so
he listened.
But the movie's life was saved in 1977 when it traveled to Europe. There it screened at the Cannes Film Festival and then moved to the London Film Festival, where the reaction was nothing short of rapturous. British critics didn't see trash. They saw a director with an assured economy of style. That's a direct quote from a review. While American reviewers were dismissing it as exploitation, the London crowd recognized it as a virtuoso display of old-style professionalism, comparing Carpenter's direct head-on camera work to legends like Howard Hawks and John Ford, which I'm sure he loved. And this European acclaim is what ultimately turned a forgotten American B-movie into a global calling card for John Carpenter. So suddenly, Carpenter is being hailed as one of the most exciting new voices in cinema. The British press loved his Hawksian dialogue and the sleek widescreen look that made a $100,000 movie look like it cost 10 times that much.
And what I want to bring up here too is that Cannes reception is, I think, one of the coolest parts is one of the people that watched the film and spoke about it was fellow horror legend George A. Romero. And he said he was there presenting Martin. And he said, Carpenter at Cannes wiped us off the face of the earth with Precinct 13. right from the scene when the little girl gets blown away, I was blown away.
Wow. Wow.
And that's the only review you needed.
Yeah, for real. Do you think he noticed the similarities to Night of the Living Dead?
He had to. I would think he had to.
Yeah, he had to. Well,
but still, I mean, for a guy like Carpenter at this point, I mean, that has to feel pretty good. That's
right. Fucking George Romero. Yeah. Who cares what anyone else thinks? Well, that European success is what eventually forced American critics to take a second look. It even led to a belated review from the legendary Vincent Canby at the New York Times, who admitted that Carpenter was an extremely resourceful director and predicted that he would one day rank alongside greats like Don Siegel. Now, that is not just a casual compliment. Don Siegel was considered one of American cinema's great, lean, efficient genre directors. The man behind Dirty Harry, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Charlie Varick. So Canby was placing Carpenter in a legitimate artistic lineage, and he wasn't wrong. But so by the time that Carpenter was ready to release Halloween in 1978, the reputation of Assault on Precinct 13 had grown so much that his new film was treated as an event by a director who had already proven that he was a master of the craft. It's one of those rare cases where a film had to leave home to find its family. Without that London audience recognizing what Carpenter was doing, we might never have gotten the career that followed.
And I guess this is probably something that we could say for later, but I'll just say it now. I mean, we had the exact, like, you talk about, like, this is the European success it's going to lead to Carpenter's career and Halloween and all of this stuff. And it's like, it was at the Milan Film Festival where Erwin Jablon's hooked Carpenter up with financier Mustafa Akkad, who saw Assault and subsequently approached Carpenter to direct a movie about a killer stalking babysitters.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Yeah. And more importantly, Assault's British success gave us two of the most iconic elements of Halloween. First, Donald Pleasance initially put Carpenter through the hoops during casting, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, but ultimately wanted to play Dr. Loomis simply because his daughters had seen Assault on Precinct 13 in London and loved it.
Yeah.
And so then second, Carpenter wanted to honor the British distributor who gave him his career, a man from Miracle Films who bought the UK theatrical rights.
What was his name?
Well, it was Mr. Michael Myers.
Hey.
So, yeah. That's right. John Carpenter was so moved by the European distributor who saved his career, he named a soulless, knife-wielding psychopath who murders teenagers after him.
Hey, but you know what?
Beautiful, touching tribute.
A legacy. Well, in the year since its release, Assault on Precinct 13 has moved from the grindhouse to the museum. It's been homaged by everyone from Edgar Wright and to Gareth Evans. I mean, what are Shaun of the Dead and The Raid but further examples of this sort of siege formula? But its most direct legacy, of course, is, and we've mentioned it briefly a couple times throughout these episodes, but the most direct legacy is the 2005 remake starring Ethan Hawke and Lawrence Fishburne. And I watched this because I'd seen it probably since 2005 when it was released, so I was just curious what I would think about it, so I decided to watch it the other day. And if you want to understand why Carpenter's original is a masterpiece, look no further than the remake. So with a $20 million budget, which is roughly 200 times what Carpenter had, the 2005 version makes the fatal mistake of over-explaining. It gives the villains names, a complex conspiracy plot, and clear motivations. And by trying to make the movie more realistic and logical, it actually stripped away the very thing that made the 1976 version so terrifying, which was that faceless, elemental, and almost supernatural sense of dread. It proved that you can't just buy the Carpenter vibe, right? You have to build it from the ground up, and you have to use restraint. Now, I don't think that the remake is like a terrible movie. I think that if you were to call it literally anything else and not compare it to Carpenter's movie, it would be fine. It's got Lawrence Fishburne and Ethan Hawke as the leads. It's got Drea De Matteo from The Sopranos. Like it's got Brian Dennehy. Like it's got a great cast. It really does. It's got right. Gabriel Byrne. It's got a really good cast, and the conspiracy plot's kind of fun and stuff. It's just that everything that you love about, or that we love at least about Assault on Precinct 13, that sort of restraint, that sort of like ambiguity is gone. It completely it over explains everything from that aspect. But if you were to watch it removed from the original and just watch it as its own thing without comparing it, I think it's a perfectly fine, action movie. It's fun, but it just doesn't have that like Carpenter magic to it,
Yeah, it's tough because you can't help but like try to compare it when
it has the same name.
It has the same name.
Characters have the same name. Like Lawrence Fishburne's character is called Bishop, even though he's the criminal in this one. And the people coming, and the people who he's like a big mob boss, and it's set in Detroit, not in LA. So, and it's set in the middle of a blizzard. Well, the blizzard is and it's on New Year's Eve, so people dismiss the gunshots as fireworks, and it's set in a blizzard. So there's a reason why there's not a lot of people out in the street, and it explains things well. But Lawrence Fishburne's character is the reason that these guys are coming into the building, that they're attacking the police station, is because they're after him, because he's got information that they don't want out if he testifies or whatever. So like I said, over explanation, but it's fine. I mean, it's a fun movie. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It's like the kind of movie you would throw on if it were released 10 years earlier. You'd watch it on TNT on some random Sunday afternoon, and you'd probably sit and watch the whole thing. That one of those kind of movies. It's perfectly acceptable. It's just not John Carpenter.
Right. It's tough to have that restraint where you're not going to explain everything, or that you can hold back and be fine with not telling your audience what's happening exactly.
Yeah.
But I did want to mention too, I just happened to be like scrolling through the internet the other day, and an image from Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's From Dusk Till Dawn came up, and the character there, I think is Scott is his name. But anyway, he's wearing a Precinct 13 shirt.
You're right. Yeah, that's the kid, right? Like the son, Juliette Lewis's brother.
Right. Yeah. And then
and that movie is also the same. It's another Siege movie.
Oh yeah, well that's a good point. Yeah. So it's a Siege movie as well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they're technically stuck inside with the bad guys because the bad guys can't get out because they're vampires. But I mean, it is very similar. Same with Sinners. You could say the same thing about Sinners. Like we could just sit here and name Siege movies for the next 2 hours that are
Under Siege.
Under Siege. Right there. The Siege.
The other thing I would have mentioned too is just like I saw a surprising amount as I was going through, like, of people like seeming to credit, and maybe this, just looking back in hindsight's 2020 or something. I don't know that I would have ever said this, but I did see like a few different places where people were crediting Assault with like, this movie sets rules in place that will define action later, like how action works, like and the mentions of things like Die Hard, for instance.
That makes sense.
And so they're like, this is a precursor to the rules that a movie like that is going to use, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of interesting.
That is very cool. Carpenter's original remains the ultimate proof of concept. This guy proved that he could take a microscopic budget and a handful of locations and engineer a lean, mean 90-minute pressure cooker. He took that Hawksian professionalism of Rio Bravo and the claustrophobic dread of Night of the Living Dead and his own cold electronic heartbeat to create a film that still feels dangerous today. So he had survived 20 nights in the shadows of LA. He had outsmarted the MPAA, and he had won over the London Film Festival, and he had found his voice, and he had found his sound. But while Assault on Precinct 13 showed the world that he was a filmmaker to watch, his next project would make him a household name. Because he was about to take that same minimalist approach, the same low-budget ingenuity, the same lean crew, that same relentless synthesizer pulse, and move it from the streets of South Central to the quiet, leafy suburbs of Illinois. So next time on Cinema Shock, we are headed to Haddonfield, and we are talking about the night that he came home. So join us as we dive into the ultimate slasher, the film that changed the horror genre forever, and honestly, probably the main reason we decided to do a John Carpenter series. We are, of course, talking about John Carpenter's Halloween.
Woo! You thought this episode was long.
Wow. You get ready. That next one for the main feed might have to get split into 3 episodes.
For real. That's
there's
a lot of stuff. Yeah, so much stuff out there about Halloween. So that's going to be a lot.
I mean, honestly, one of the reasons that it's taken us so long to do John Carpenter is because we've been intimidated by doing a Halloween episode because it's been done to death and there's so much out there about it. And we're trying to compile all of that into a single episode. It's going to be a lot, but it's going to be good because we've been working on it already for a while, and we've found some good stories, and I think it's going to be a good time. I'm excited to get into it.
Oh, I'm excited too. I mean, I love some horror, and I especially love some Halloween. So that's going to be I'm excited to do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to be bringing it because it's one of my favorite movies ever. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely have to bring our A game for it.
Yeah. So join us here next time for that one. Again, if you want to hear the full extended uncut episode with all the bonus stuff that gets cut out of the regular episodes, head to cinemashock.net/plus. And Gary, do you have anything else to add, or you just want to let our listeners know where you can be found on the internet?
I think I've said enough. I am at, this is Gary Horne, though, if you want to see me say more.
And I am at Justin_Bishop on most of the social media things. The show is cinema_shock. We're on Instagram. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Twitter, I think, or X or whatever it is. And all the things, Facebook, all the bullshit. And cinemashock.net for all the stuff. Links to our merch, links to CinemaShock Plus, and all that stuff can be found on there. And if you like this episode, if you like what we're doing with John Carpenter, with Assault on Precinct 13, the best thing you can do for us is to share it with somebody else who you know might enjoy it as well. That we are a grassroots podcast. We have no marketing team. I mean, we are the marketing team. Me and Gary are the marketing team. We are the research team. We are the writers. We are the editors. We do literally everything for this show between the two of us. So we need a little boots on the ground. So send this to your John Carpenter horror-loving friends and let us know that you do. Let us know what you think about the show. Let us know what you think about this episode. We'd love to hear from you. Well, I think that's all we got this week, Gary. Until next time.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
And be excellent to each other.